Hey, it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today, zooming in on the concept of really how to know if one is truly codependent. I had a viewer who had asked about that, and so I would definitely like to address this in this video. And I also want to give a quick shout out to a wonderful viewer who had stated in a correspondence to me that and I definitely agree 100% in that there's a lot of information about what it really is, narcissism. So, but there's not oftentimes enough information about how do we really get through it. What do we do once we've experienced this abuse, and how do we get out of it? I think was the comment. So I want to give a shout out and say thank you so much for your inquiry. It's so important, and really that is the goal of this channel here. And I also do want to ask you all to send out your prayers to this viewer in love and light and healing, particularly from your higher energies of healing, as this person is facing some health issues right now, and your prayers do carry a lot of healing energy. So if you could please send your healing out to her, I would definitely appreciate it. So I want to zoom in on the concept of codependence. Codependence exists when one has really, it is a situation, it's not a diagnosis, it's not a personality disorder. And a lot has been really done in the literature about this, particularly the work of Melody Beatty. But, codependency is when one really forgoes their own identity of being an independent, autonomous person, and through trauma, through being abused, emotionally, physically, a pattern is set up where the person basically begins to identify with the abuser. This is also labeled Stockholm Syndrome, which is listed after the Nazi concentration camp, where people were so tormented, so brainwashed, so abused that they began to identify with their captor and essentially comply with them, take care of their needs, basically fell right into line. They lost their feeling of value. They lost their own perspective. They lost their own personal worth, and really started to comply with the captor and abuser, and really listen to them and identify with them more or less. Codependency is set up in a similar pattern where, after experiencing trauma through emotional abuse, neglect meaning not satisfying your needs, not acknowledging your needs, or having your needs minimized, downplayed, and shamed. In other words, not having the right to love, not having the access to affection and guidance, not having access to really kind of moving through those young stages of development where we're learning autonomy and integrity and self-reliance and individuation and kind of separation from our parents, and being taught those skills and then being able to build on them, really moving forward into young adult and then into adulthood. So if as a young child someone was traumatized, their needs shamed, they were ridiculed, they were physically abused for misbehaving. I mean, all children cry. That's how children first learn when they're infants. And a lot of abuse, which is horrific. But a lot of abuse takes place in the infant years, when a child is crying because they're hungry, because they're tired. I mean, they don't have access to a language yet, so they cry for what they need. That's supposed to get attention from their parents. And oftentimes children then are scolded, shamed, and punished for using their voice and speaking up and crying. So, further perpetuating the pain. They're physically abused for crying. They are, shut alone and neglected for having basic needs. They are treated without compassion. They are treated without satisfaction of these basic needs. So they begin to feel a sense of helplessness early in life. And so really it's this learning that they are almost really rejected. And it's the internalizing of this, a very low sort of self-esteem, which then is carried with them, which they then begin to, we're getting to, am I codependent? Just hang in there, stay with me here. So they then begin to identify with the needs of that adult. In other words, I can't take care of myself. I have to, I am really that not important. In fact, this adult and them being happy is more important than anything. So then what I have to do then is take care of this adult. So the experience is, you know, having to take care of an adult before your time. In other words, putting them at the forefront of attention versus you being at the forefront of attention, which is how it's supposed to be. That's how a child grows up. It doesn't mean that they're spoiled, that their needs are taken care of. It's the flip, you know, of the adult abuser, the narcissist abuser, who shames you for having needs and criticizes and tells you you're spoiled and you don't deserve it. I mean, these are all lies. These are all lies that are projected onto that innocent child, that clean slate, that tabula rasa that they arrive into life with, and they're told that they're negative, you know. And so it's, again, it's that fear-based personality which subjugates them to a situation of codependence, which means losing one's identity. In other words, forgoing one's needs, forgoing one's voice, one's interests, and all that, you know, goes with that, and then instead relating to the caregiving of another, putting another first, always being there for another, sacrificing of self to be there for another. And your whole identity becomes this sort of caretaking. Yes, we are there to take care of each other, but you should be able to feel a sense of wholeness when you go and you take care of others. So that is the real goal, you know, as a you know, in infancy, it's the, as a psychologist call it, it's the role of attachment and then separation. So you have healthy attachment to your caregivers, and then, you know, ideally, healthy attachment and then healthy separation. So in other words, you can separate and become your own little person when your needs are met and acknowledged, and then, you know, you don't feel ashamed for having emotions. You don't feel ashamed for, you know, having your own opinions or etc. So codependency really is when we're sacrificing that for another. And so, and this really perpetuates abuse. So if you're staying in that codependent mechanism or that codependent state where you're continuing to receive abuse, emotional abuse, hostility, negativity, shaming, I mean, that is stunting one's growth, and those are lies, and no one needs to withstand the abuse that is perpetuated by a narcissistic abuser. In fact, the narcissist abuse tends to become more pronounced, more severe, and more calculated with time. So remember, as we're saying here in this channel, it is the true narcissist has a personality disorder. They have a physiological brain abnormality. Okay, so I mean, if you can find it on a brain scan, that means that there is an abnormality going on. Just like if you were to go in for a liver scan and they were to find that you had cirrhosis, I mean, you know, you would have X, Y, and Z symptoms if you had cirrhosis of the liver. Likewise, you know, and I'm keeping it very unclinical here, but if you were to have a brain scan and see in the brains of those who are personality disordered, the narcissist into the psychopathic. So we're all, you know, on one sort of cluster B situation and really varying degrees and amounts. In fact, a lot of the narcissists really resonate with a lot of these psychopathic, you know, immoral sort of behaviors. As we're saying now that, you know, the abuse is then perpetuated in time. So really, you know, you have to step out of the abuse. Emotionally, step out. Physically, step out. Spiritually, step out of the abuse, because the abuse is going to be, you know, perpetuated by the abuser. And when you really get to come out of it, when you really get to emerge out of it, is when you begin to become aware of this situation. So awareness is your very first key, and number two is being committed to understanding that that was in essence a lie, that was abusive treatment, and now you have to activate sort of that internal integrity and internal wholeness within yourself, which begins initially as like a little ignition, a little tiny spark, which you have to really protect, nurture, and then, you know, give air and breath and a lot of positive emotional attention and positive emotional energy to that little spark, so it'll become stronger and stronger, and eventually, with each day, that flame, that white light, we're just going to call it a white light, which is, you know, your truth, your true identity, not your abused self, your true self. Once you begin to then sort of give that some oxygen, give it some air, give it some acknowledgement, give it some validation, the mental affirmations are extremely powerful. Awakening up that sort of unconscious area which has been abused, that identity of being abused, of being a victim, saying that is no longer, I'm no longer connecting to that abused personality. I now am seeking to be responsible and nurture that little flame within me. And then giving through mental affirmations, I am wonderful. I am a good heart. I am a good person. I am a caring and loving individual. I have love and joy to give to others without being abused. I am magnificent. I am connected to my higher source, and I love the good and all that is beneficial around me. So it's validating your connection to what you truly enjoy, what is truly peaceful, harmonious in life, and it's acknowledging your connection to that and stating, I am good, I am wonderful, I am magnificent, I am connected to humanity, I do have love of humanity, I believe in humanity, and I believe in myself and my ability to connect and reach out and be in relationship and resonance with others and the good in humanity. And I believe that that overpowers the abuse. So once you get to really speak that into existence, which has to be done, so this has to be done. And what actually happens on a neurological level is when you begin to acknowledge that and speak that, that actually is waking up that sort of abused area on a physiological basis within yourself, within your spirit, and it's allowing that sort of maladaptive treatment to fade away. And the voice of your healing is becoming stronger. So as you continue to work on this, as you continue to emphasize and focus on that, the voice of your healing in yourself becomes stronger, and so that the other abused, depressed, anxious, disease sort of treatment begins to be pruned away. So it's literally what's happening in the mind, body, and spirit when you begin to nurture and give validation to your positive self. And that also comes with going no contact to the abusers in your life, because they will perpetuate that abuse. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussions, and support.